This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Back in the 1940s, give or take a few years, families would gather around and watch the radio. Edgar Bergen, Charlie McCarthy, Jack Benny, and others. Today, this show gives you the opportunity to listen to TV. Tim Farmer joins us with experts from the recent live call-in show on KET on the subject of wildlife diversity. Kentucky Afield TV, next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Hunters, take a shot at the Kentucky State Fair. This is Tim Farmer from Kentucky Afield, and if you need to complete your hunter education, do it at the fair. This year, you can fulfill your range day requirements using the Firearms Training Simulator at the Fish and Wildlife booth in the South Wing. If you've done your online hunter ed course, then schedule your range day at the Kentucky State Fair. Opening days are just days away. Learn more and register at fw.ky.gov.
Have you had a good day?
Oh, it was a glorious day. But you know me, I kind of let things pile up till I have an entire day worth of stuff to do. I had to go to the bank, post office.
So errands then.
Yeah. You know, I even had to find a place that does sewing.
Sewing?
Yeah. I needed this little buckle strap thingy on my life jacket fixed. But I got it done, and now we're ready for the weekend. You know, the important stuff's done anyway.
Boaters are busy on and off the water. That's why Kentucky conservation officers remind you, your life jacket's got your back. This is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio, and let me say, Kentucky Afield TV's Tim Farmer. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
I have notes here. Let me find them.
Notes
I wanted to give you some trivia here to open this up.
Oh,
before we get into this program.
Do I win anything like a new Ford truck? Or...
I wish. 15%. Would you believe me if I told you that sportsmen and women only hunt or fish or trap 15%? The animals that are in Kentucky, there are 865 different species of critters.
That's a bunch.
That either fly through, walk through, slither through this state. Songbirds to rattlesnakes. 865. 127 of those we'll find sometimes on the end of a hook or in the shotgun sights. 15%.
15%. I guess that's not too surprising when you think about how many critters we have.
It's interesting that the State Department of Fish and Wildlife has a coordinator for such things as deer, elk, bear, turkey, waterfowl, several species of waterfowl. But for that 738 other that falls into that other category.
Non-game, or what else do they call it besides
wildlife diversity?
Wildlife diversity. I like that.
Falls into one lap. Well, it just seems unfair, doesn't it? I hope she gets paid 738 times the money. I don't think so.
But you know what? That goes to show you that when you buy your hunting and fishing license, you get a lot more bang for your buck than you think about. You know, if you're interested in, and I think most sportsmen are well-rounded people who enjoy the total outdoor experience. You know, when they see things like a peregrine falcon, and they see, critters running around of all stripes. You know, when you think about hellbenders and, all these things are being looked at and investigated, and we're just as concerned about them as we are the other animals.
The show right now that we're about to do, this is sort of a joint venture between television and radio. We've never done this before, and I've been around a long time, so have you, that the radio program has basically repeated one of the live call-in shows from KET.
But you know what, Charlie? That was insightful on your part, because when you think about it, here's the way the call-in show works. We have a phone bank that sit around several tables, and they take a bunch of questions. Those folks immediately write down that question. They write down his name. They write down where he's from. They run the question into me. I'll dig through those and try to find one I haven't seen before. And it's not a visual show. Most shows that we do, we're out hunting and fishing and things like that. We're answering questions. So this lends itself very well to the audio portion right here, because you really, other than Jeff coming in and talking about an owl on set, He does such a good job there too. That's all you need to hear, and you can visualize it.
Even if you're just listening to this show from the other room, you're still getting all this quality information. The live call-in shows from Kentucky Afield Television. In the past, there were 4 of them, 2 in the spring for turkey, spring fishing, this wildlife diversity show in the late summer, and then
the fall hunting.
The run-up to deer season.
Right.
Not limited to deer.
Oh, no, it's wide open for all the hunting seasons.
Now there's a 5th new show.
We're history-making here, Charlie. That is the fall fishing show. You know, fishing in Kentucky never stops. So, you know, in the fall there's a lot going on. So, you know, you think about the number of people out there who participate in the hunting and fishing realm. Fishing is a huge portion of that. So there's a lot of information in the fall.
The fall fishing show airs on Saturday night, the 29th of August. Looking forward to the debut, the inaugural.
You know, something that we've done recently, too, on these call-in shows is to incorporate Facebook questions. We have a Kentucky Afield Facebook page out there. Get on there and like that and become a part of our Facebook family. And that night, as we're taking questions on the phone, if we have a slow time where I'm waiting on questions to come in, well, I can look right there on the Facebook page and see your name, where you're from, and immediately ask those questions from Facebook. So that's another great way to get your question answered.
Well, we look forward to taking a listen to this, the Wildlife Diversity Call-In Show from earlier this month.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm Tim Farmer. Tonight we have a special 1-hour call-in show all about non-game wildlife in Kentucky. Also going to take some questions on Facebook, Kentucky Afield Facebook page. It's just Kentucky Afield, like it, or we won't bring you an Easter basket next year. The folks will be taking your questions tonight. First up, Brooke Hines, bat ecologist. Thanks for being here. Mm-hmm. Kate Hayden, I saw a little bird you were holding there a minute ago. Avian ecologist. And Dana Baxley, herpetologist. Now, tonight's show is about critters that you don't necessarily hunt, so that's a bunch of them. So we've already got some questions, and don't forget your Facebook questions. Kentucky Afield, that's our Facebook page. Now, let's go ahead and start off with Josh from Crittenden County. He found a dead finch by his feeder. What should he do?
Okay. Well, this is pretty common this time of year. There's a disease that's spread at bird feeders. It's called mycoplasma or house finch eye disease. And it just affects the goldfinches and the house finches. And unfortunately, it's pretty common in Kentucky. If you find a dead finch or a sick finch at your feeder, you should take your feeder down, dip it in bleach water, and leave it down for about 2 weeks so that you avoid spreading that disease to other finches.
So it is contagious to other finches?
It is, yeah, and it's spread at the feeder. So it's good to leave it down for a bit until the disease passes.
Scott is from Anderson County, and he has a barn owl nesting in his barn. And he wants to know, is that unusual?
Well, it is unusual. Barn owls are a rare species in Kentucky, but they certainly are around. It's one of the species that we track extensively, and so if you do have a barn owl in your barn, we sure would appreciate it if you called us and let us know. We have a research project on them, and we just like to learn more about your owls. So if you have barn owls, please do give us a call.
What does a barn owl look like for those who might be thinking, well, I know what a screech owl looks like, or what do they look like specifically?
Well, it was the owl that was on our intro. They're called the monkey-faced owl. They have a round, flat face. You tend to see them a lot in movies. They're a very beautiful owl. They're white in the face, whitish breast, and they make a very distinct screech. They do not hoot at all. They just screech.
Daryl is from Bourbon County. Are bats in Kentucky being affected by white nose syndrome? Now, that's in the news everywhere. Pete, first of all, let's talk about what is white nose syndrome.
So white nose syndrome is a fungus that is affecting and is responsible for the deaths of probably at this point over 7 million hibernating bats in the eastern U.S. And so Kentucky is definitely a state that has been affected by white nose syndrome. And we have started to see mortality in the state pretty significantly. So, if you've noticed a lot of more mosquitoes this year, it's not just because it's been a wet summer, but it's also because we have lost a lot of bats. And they are one of the primary predators of night-flying insects. There is current research ongoing looking at biocontrols, and that's really kind of the last option that we have as humans to be able to help the bats. And so we're really hoping that these treatments can, advance in enough time to where we can save some of our hibernating species and help the states out west that are just now being impacted.
You were listening to the Kentucky Afield Television live call-in show from a couple of weekends ago on the subject of wildlife diversity here in the Commonwealth. It is the first such joint venture between the radio and TV shows. We'll have a break and then back with more. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Back on Kentucky Afield Radio, we're doing a joint broadcast today with the Kentucky Afield Television Show and your host, Tim Farmer. TV audio on radio doesn't always translate, but in this case it does. Let me tell you a little story behind the scenes. Saturday night, I was home working in the kitchen, laying on my back under the sink, working on the disposal. On the TV was Tim Farmer and the Kentucky Afield TV show, the live call-in talking about wildlife diversity. As time passed on, I realized I was enjoying the show just as much as if I were watching it. So, got an idea.
Okay, Sherman is from Henry County, and he wants to know what poisonous snakes can be found in the Henry and Trimble County areas.
Henry and Trimble County areas. You know, the bluegrass region is very sparse when it comes to venomous snakes. Pygmy rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, copperheads, and timber rattlesnakes are 4 types of venomous snakes, and none of them are common in that area. So he's in a pretty safe part of the world if he doesn't like venomous snakes.
What can I do, says Arnold from Laurel County, to keep the woodpeckers from pecking holes in his apple trees?
From pecking
I
holes.
hate it when they do that.
It's usually a house or something like that. But, if the apple trees are close to his house, he could do things like spraying the hose and making loud noises to scare the birds away. The birds are protected, so you cannot kill them, but you can certainly harass them away from a spot. And sometimes people do things like tying up pie pans in the trees and just something that sort of rattles and scares the birds off.
Catherine Burke wants to know what's a good app for identification of bird songs.
Oh, gosh, there's so many. iBird is one of the very popular ones. I guess the Audubon app is good. I'm not a huge smartphone person, so I'm honestly not an expert on that. But there's a lot of good ones out there.
Robbie is from Hardin County. How do you get rid of a bat inside of your house?
Well, that's very common this time of year when the juveniles are becoming buoyant and they're kind of like teenagers learning how to drive, and they'll take a wrong turn into your house. So the easiest thing to do, if it's just a single bat and you don't have a colony living in your attic or on the eaves or under your shutters, is to kind of the same thing with the hummingbird, leave a door or window open, especially around dusk and nighttime, and they should be able to find their way out. There are safe ways to remove a bat if it's not leaving, and I always refer people to Bat Conservation International's website on how to safely remove a bat without touching it. Just make sure that you don't have a colony living in your attic, because sometimes bats that live in attics can creep down into living quarters, and then that's a whole separate issue.
Judy Heiss wants to know, why are your Kentucky Afield caps made in China? Well, I used to hand stitch them, but it got to taking way too long, so we had to.
I'm going to guess because of cost.
I would say that's probably
my number. I'm going to guess.
Let me see. All right, we've got a lot of cottonmouth questions. Alan Creech he says not really a question, but wonder if you could mention that there are no cottonmouths in central Kentucky. Can you say where they are specifically?
I actually have a map because I was expecting some venomous snake questions, so I don't know what the best way to
There are a whole lot of
is.
watermarks and questions here.
Here is your cottonmouth map for Kentucky. So, as we reiterated before, pretty much any snake in the eastern part of the state is not a cottonmouth.
So just those sparsely populated areas west, way in the western part
Ohio
of the state.
County. Exactly.
Now, you know, a lot of times some of the bigger water snakes, they have a heavy body like
they
that.
look very similar.
What's the snake that looks the most like a western cottonmouth?
Well, when they're young, I mean, I think just the northern water snake looks a lot like the cottonmouth. And then in far western Kentucky, we have broad-banded water snakes and diamondback water snakes, and all of those can be confused for the cottonmouth.
But never fear, that's that little map you showed, just in the western part of the state. That's where they are.
Absolutely.
Mike is from Danville. Why does one hummingbird seem to dominate at the feeder? Is there one like?
Well, hummingbirds are territorial, as are most birds, and so they're protecting their territory. They're protecting their food resources, and it can be pretty entertaining to watch that happen. But usually, it's a territorial male that's trying to take over a feeder and keep all the other ones away.
They get pretty.
They get pretty feisty.
They get pretty aggressive, don't they? All right. Excuse me. Terry is from Muhlenberg County. Wants to know about an eagle's flight. Do they have limitations on flight? What is their wingspan and eating habits? So just touch on
well, bald eagles have a wingspan of 6 to 8 feet. They're not a terribly fast-flying bird. They're built for catching fish out of the water, and so their diet is typically made up of fish and waterfowl. They'll also take carrion or dead animals, especially during the winter, and they'll take anything else they can catch. But like I said, they're not the fastest bird of prey, and so they tend to take slower animals.
Jerry Hyde on Facebook wants to know, are there any counties in central Kentucky that have no poisonous snakes?
There are, indeed, in the inner bluegrass. And I actually have some range maps for copperheads as well as, I believe I have...
So around the bluegrass area, there's not...
I mean, in the bluegrass and timber rattlesnakes as well, especially timber rattlesnakes are vacant from pretty much the inner and outer bluegrass. And copperheads are statewide. However, there are counties in the inner bluegrass that have no records. And I'll show you this map real quick, and then maybe we'll all be straight on our venomous snake range facts.
Wow. You know, the thing I found interesting about a copperhead a couple years ago is they're one of the most common snakes in the state.
They are.
Top 5? Am I
absolutely.
correct?
They can be very abundant where they're found. So.
Harlan is from LaRue County. He's got a red male with a pale green female in the front yard in a nest. They're not cardinals. What might they be?
Well, it sounds like they might be summer tanagers. Summer tanagers, the males are all red. Their wings are red. Everything on them is red. And they have a big stout bill, a little bit longer than a cardinal's. And the females are kind of a yellowish green. Their song is kind of like a robin, and they like forested areas. So maybe that's it, if he has kind of a forested
Anthony
yard.
is from Salt Lake. Do black snakes keep copperheads away?
That is up for debate. I think he's probably talking about king snakes, not black racers. And king snakes are called king snakes because they are immune to the venom of other venomous snakes, certain species. So a lot of herpetologists do think that you won't necessarily find copperheads when you have king snakes present. So that's an interesting question.
Don is from Shelby County. His purple martins did not show up this year. Do you have any idea why? Is that something that happens?
That can be a tough question to answer. It may take them a few years to attract purple martins again. They tend to come back to the same areas every year. It could be that, maybe some of them didn't survive the winter, or there was a new colony or a new little purple martin housing complex put up somewhere nearby that attracted them. It's tough to say.
Subdivision.
Yeah, it's not always easy to explain.
Richard from Jefferson County, and this is a common question tonight. How do you get owls? Is there any kind of habitat you could do to bring owls into your place?
Well, most owls eat rodents and rabbits, and so by letting some habitat grow up, maybe not mowing an area, would be a good way to bring in some rodents for owl food. And then Leaving snags standing is very important for owls wherever it's safe to do so. Leaving hollow trees be. That's where a lot of owls will nest. Some owls you can put up boxes for, like barn owls or screech owls. So you may be able to install a nest box. And other than that, it's just letting some rough habitat grow up for the rodents and other critters.
Glenn is from Russell County. He's seeing lizards hanging out and crawling around with a blue tail.
Yes.
What might that be? Are they bad or good?
Oh, I think they're absolutely good. They're eating insects probably around his porch or something. We have 3 lizards that at times in their life when they're younger have blue tails. The broadhead skink, the southeastern 5-line skink, and the 5-line skink.
Something we might want to mention, if for some reason we don't get to your question tonight or you're still wondering about some things, you can call the department, 1-800-858-1549, or check out our website at
fw.ky.gov.
Or you can snail mail us the old-fashioned way. What's our address?
Number 1 Game Farm.
Sportsman's Lane. Gotcha. Number 1 Sportsman's Lane. I do that all the time.
I know.
Over the telephone.
Like that.
So if we don't get to your
there.
question, if you don't get your question answered tonight, and again, it's kind of a joke because I say everybody call the information center on Monday, but we have the best information people in the world. They will help you with any question that you've got.
You are listening to the Wildlife Diversity Call-in Show from Kentucky Afield Television. Tim Farmer is your host, and just ahead, a great horned owl takes over the show. We'll take a break and then have our fishing report, so stay with us. You're listening to Kentucky Afield TV on Kentucky Afield Radio. Kentucky Afield Radio, Charlie Baglin. If you'd like to hear this show again, there are 3 ways to do it. 1, we're a podcast. Just go to iTunes and look up Kentucky Afield Radio. Go to myhuntingandfishing.com, or you can find us on YouTube. There's no moving pictures. It's just a static picture that says Kentucky Afield Radio, but you know you found us when you see that. Put in Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box, and there we are. It is time now for our fishing report. Wildlife diversity is the subject. More of Kentucky Afield Television on Kentucky Afield Radio. After the break. Hip's a hip word. Hip-hop music. This cat is really hip, says 70s star Sammy Davis Jr. But for migratory bird hunters, HIP is the law. HIP stands for Harvest Information Program. To hunt birds like doves or geese, you must complete the HIP survey first to help officials better estimate game bird populations. Go to the My Profile page at the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website. You just need 5 minutes. Hip hip hooray. fw.ky.gov. Charlie Baglin back on Kentucky Afield Radio. We are featuring an encore presentation of a recent live Kentucky Afield TV show, Saturday nights from KET. We are answering a few viewer questions from across the state on the lesser known, the lesser spotlighted creatures that share the state with us. Dana Baxley, who heads research for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, along with Brooke Hines, bat ecologist, and Kate Hayden, who is a bird specialist, are the guests. Let's get back to the show, and here is your host, Tim Farmer.
Bobby Smith is from Hart County. He has barn swallows getting in his barn and, how can I say this, making a mess on his equipment. Mm-hmm. What should he do to encourage them to go mess elsewhere?
Okay. Barn swallows are a good thing to have around. You know, they do eat a lot of insects, but I do understand they can be messy. And so I guess the best thing to do would be they look for kind of a certain structure. If you can't, kind of change the structure of the barn to make it less appealing. You can, before they lay eggs in their nest, you can take the nest down. Migratory bird nests are protected when they contain eggs or chicks. When they're just starting on a nest, if you really need to deter a bird, you can take the nest down. But that's about all you can do.
Tarping.
They are pretty persistent. Yeah.
Put tarps on things.
A Facebook question. Gary Bryan wants to know, why do male cardinals continually fly into his window? Let's do the same thing to mine.
Yeah. Well, cardinals are not the smartest songbird out there.
How do you rate the intelligence of the songbird?
The birds that have to migrate tend to be a little bit more intelligent. They have to remember how to get to and from their wintering grounds. Cardinals don't migrate, so they don't have to have quite as much going on up there.
Really?
You know?
I did not.
And so they see their reflection in the window, and they think it's another territorial male, and they're trying to chase them off. And so you can do things to make your windows less reflective, like put some of those little decorator decals on them, or just let them get dirty. That's what I do.
Or put a red cardinal looking thing out there, and they can attack that instead of your window. That would just be mean, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, that would be a little cruel. Yeah.
You know what?
I would just let the windows get dirty.
It's like 20 after 8. It's amazing that we've gone through that many questions this quick. But part of this show that's different about the other shows is we always bring animals in. And I know we have a few over there. We've been having a lot of owl questions. So in just a second, we're going to see an owl. But meanwhile, let's get back to the questions. There's a bunch of snake questions tonight. Jerry's from McCracken County. Mm-hmm. And he wants to know, what is the average size of a copperhead?
Average size of a copperhead. I can't tell you exactly, but they're heavy-bodied snakes, but they're not incredibly long snakes. I mean, I would say probably no larger than 14 inches is probably about average length.
Albert is from Fayette County, and he wants to know, do goldfinches migrate?
Goldfinches do migrate. We get a lot of them that come down from up north, starting pretty soon here.
So they can more than likely solve a Rubik's Cube better than a cardinal?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, Mike was fishing on Taylorsville Lake and thought he saw a pair of golden eagles. Is that possible in Kentucky?
It is possible to see a golden eagle in Kentucky, but they are far less common than the bald eagle. What he probably saw in Taylorsville Lake was the 2 young bald eagles that came out of the nest there this year, and they look an awful lot like golden eagles. You can tell the difference if you're looking at them through binoculars by looking for the golden nape. The young bald eagles don't have that. A lot of golden eagles have very organized white patches under their wings. Young bald eagles will just have mottled white all over them.
In the background, I see our first guest tonight.
Guest of honor.
Guest of honor, who's coming on stage right now.
He's nervous.
In just a second.
He's staged. Right.
All right. Charlotte is from Macquarie County. Where have all the whippoorwills gone? And I know they're not all gone because I heard some this turkey season.
Yeah, there certainly does seem to be a decline. That's a question I get a lot. We don't know the answer. We're trying to start some research on it. Whippoorwills nest on the ground, and we wonder if maybe ground nesting predators, an increase in coyotes and feral cats may be a problem for them. But we're hoping to have some answers on that soon.
Look who we got here. Look who we have here. Oh, that's just right.
Heard you all been getting questions about owls.
Yeah, absolutely.
So always a great opportunity to bring some non-game critters along. So what I have here is a very, very common owl that we have all throughout the state. You can find this owl in pretty much every county. And what this is a great horned owl. And called a horned owl for fairly obvious reasons. Those are just ear tufts. Those are not actually his ears. A lot of people think that. Those are just feathers, but they sort of look like horns. And called a great horned owl because of the size. And this is actually the largest of the 4 owl species that we have in Kentucky year-round.
Now, they look huge, but what does that owl probably weigh?
He actually weighs about 3 pounds. 3 pounds. A lot less than people would think, but if you're a bird that flies, you need to be lightweight at all times. And to help them do that, they have a lot of hollow bones, and they're covered in feathers, and feathers don't weigh very much. And those of us who ever parked our vehicle underneath a tree that had birds in it know that they have very efficient digestive systems. So they poop a lot because poop is heavy. And most people during their life in school have probably dissected an owl pellet. The materials that their bodies can't use, in the case of an owl, that's going to be hair, teeth, and bones, they cough it up out the hole that it came in.
Wow. That is extraordinary. Now, what's some of their favorite meals?
You know, they're what we call an apex predator, which means they're at the very, very top of the food chain. They don't have many natural predators to worry about themselves, and they eat a lot of different things, ranging from small rodents like mice and rats and chipmunks up to much larger things. They're one of the only predators we know of that will routinely kill and eat skunks, as a matter of fact. Now, they can't carry them away. We often get asked, you know, I've got a small dog or I've got a cat, could it carry it away? The rule of thumb with raptors is that they can carry away about half their body weight. Well, we established that he weighs about 3 pounds, so he could only carry away something that weighs about 1.5 pounds. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't kill it and sit on the ground with it and eat it.
Man, oh man, can you imagine eating a skunk?
Yeah.
I mean, after it's...
This is a great illustration. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a great illustration of the fact that except for vultures, birds have a really, really bad sense of smell. And so if he were out in the wild and he caught a skunk and it sprayed him, he really wouldn't care because he couldn't smell it anyway.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for that. You got some more critters for later, right?
Yeah, we got some more.
Well, thank you so much. Let's get back to a few questions. Bill is from Hart County. Are cottonmouth snakes in the Green River? I believe we looked at your map.
They're not. Well, at least in Hart County. No.
Velvin is from Macquarie County. Is it illegal to kill timber rattlesnakes on your property?
It is not technically illegal to kill timber rattlesnakes on your property. However, we strongly discourage that. Most people that are bit by snakes, it's while they're trying to kill them or handling them intentionally. You are allowed to legally possess 5 of any snake species in Kentucky except the copper belly water snake.
There's a lot of folks calling, talking about the black vultures being a pest. Wesley's from Shelby County. They're getting in the garbage. They're hanging out around calves. What can they do to try to push them out of the area?
Well, it depends on what the vultures are doing. Vultures in the wintertime will gather in large numbers in roosting areas, and they're just kind of a safety in numbers type bird. A lot of times these areas are warmer areas like downtown areas near rivers or perhaps power plants. And to deter roosting vultures, usually you have to do what we call a pyrotechnics regime, where you have to shoot off some loud fireworks for 7 to 10 nights in a row, make them uncomfortable, make them understand that that's not the best place for them to sleep at night.
Excuse to have some bottle rockets.
Yeah, of course you may have to get permission from the local community before you make all that racket. If they're getting in your trash, loud noises, spraying with the hose, things like that. They are protected birds, so you cannot kill them without a permit. But if they are doing damage to your livestock, if they are killing calves, which rarely does happen, and you have if you have photographs of that, then you can get a permit to reduce your vulture population. But you have to go through the appropriate federal venue to do that.
All right. Amelia is from Hart County. How can she attract bats? Smart lady, she wants bats.
Well, that is a good question. So a lot of the bats that we have in Kentucky, at some point in their life, most of them will roost in trees. So it would help if you're in a forested or semi-forested area. Bat houses are always a good thing to put up, and we have plans for bat houses online, as well as you can buy bat houses. Bat houses will only work if they're installed properly, so there are guidelines on how to install bat houses online depending on the structure that you want, but a good rule of thumb is they need to be 15 feet or more off the ground. They need to have really good solar exposure, full sun, 6 to 10 hours a day. That helps keep them warm for maternity colonies to form. So if you follow those 2 things and you've got some trees nearby, there's a decent chance you can get some bats.
Tiffany Case Reed wants to know what species of bat are most prevalent in northern Kentucky.
Oh, okay. So in northern Kentucky, the species most prevalent would probably be the eastern red bat. And they're a migratory species, so they will migrate south in the winter. But we are starting to figure out that they like to roost in leaf litter during the winter months as well. So we're finding out more and more things about our migratory species.
Steve's from Madison County. Whippoorwills, here's them in the spring, but not in the summer. Do they migrate? Where do they go? Or is that just their...
Yeah, they do migrate. They go down to probably Mexico and south for the winter, and so he may be hearing them just migrating through in the spring, and then they maybe go on somewhere else to nest.
John is from Jefferson County. Other than hummingbirds, what other birds drink nectar?
Well, occasionally at your hummingbird feeder, you might find a downy woodpecker or even orchard or Baltimore oriole. And that's probably about it for nectar drinkers that I can think of.
Ronald is from Macquarie County. When do copperheads and rattlesnakes mate? What is their mating season?
They mate in the spring or early summer.
You are listening to the Wildlife Diversity Call-in Show from Kentucky Afield Television. Tim Farmer is your host. Box turtles make a special appearance on the show in the final few. Stay with us. You're listening to Kentucky Afield TV on Kentucky Afield Radio. Charlie Bagman back on Kentucky Afield Radio. We sound a little different today, giving you a replay of the special Kentucky Afield TV show that aired a couple of weekends back on Kentucky Educational TV, talking about the bountiful wildlife that calls Kentucky home. Tim Farmer is your host.
And Missy from Taylor County, how cold does it have to be before snakes hibernate?
That's a good question. It depends on the snake. I'm not really sure what the temperature is, but generally snakes aren't that active when it's much cooler than mid-40s, sometimes low 50s.
Kitty is from Carter County, thought she saw a cormorant today. Is that possible in Kentucky?
Yeah, it's very possible, especially in western Kentucky. We do get a lot of them. And this time of year in late summer, sometimes you'll see some solitary birds in kind of strange places.
Jewel from Tennessee wants to know, what are crows good for other than waking her up in the morning?
Oh, well, they're good for, scavenging, cleaning up roadkill, things like that. That's kind of a funny question.
Ron Johnson is from Shelby County. Do rattlesnakes shed their skin?
Yes, they absolutely do.
And David from Jefferson County, are there northern ringneck snakes in northern Kentucky?
Yes, there are.
We're getting so many snake questions.
Yeah.
Maybe we should bring a snake in.
Oh, we brought a snake in.
Cue the snake.
Absolutely. And I will say this, what I have here is a corn snake, compliments of the Salado Wildlife Education Center, great facility in Frankfort, Kentucky.
And they only eat cream corn, right?
No.
They also eat hominy.
Hominy. They only eat hominy.
Contrary to the corn snake's name, it does not eat corn. It eats rodents, mice, that type of thing. They call it a corn snake. Well, there are two hypotheses about why they call it a corn snake. The first is that its belly looks a little bit like Indian corn. Mm-hmm. And the second is that back in the day, it was not uncommon to find corn snakes around corn cribs eating small mammals and things like that. And the corn snake has a really special distribution in Kentucky. It's only found in two populations that are separated by 150 miles or so. So it's down in Hart and Edmonson counties and then over in eastern Kentucky near the Red River Gorge. So we're very interested in any corn snake sightings that you all have out there. And unfortunately, some people mistake it for a copperhead, and they're often killed because people think they're copperheads.
Let's talk real quick about an easy way to tell a poisonous snake from a non-poisonous snake, from a safe distance.
Yeah.
What are some quick things you can do?
I mean, the easiest thing you can do is be familiar with the snakes that are native to your area. There are only 4 venomous snakes in Kentucky, and one of them is the pygmy rattlesnake, which is only in far western Kentucky. But in general, people often talk about head shape being more diamond shaped for venomous snakes, but you probably don't want to get close enough to look at the head or the pupils. So if you see a snake and you're concerned it might be venomous, the best thing to do is just to leave it alone. Right. Keep a safe distance.
They have their place.
They do have their place.
What else have you got over there in that other box?
We have a box turtle, if you want me to bring that out.
Let's look at that while we're at it. Now, they are not endangered.
No, box turtles are not endangered. That is correct.
We get that question a lot. Can you have these for a pet?
Yeah, you can. In Kentucky, you can keep a box turtle as a pet. You can't have more than 5. That's our state rule. Most people have seen box turtles usually in May and June on rainy days or after a big rain. Box turtles will be out on the roads. And one of the questions I get a lot is, I saw a box turtle on the road, so I moved it to some really good habitat a few miles down the road, and I would like to share with the public that that's probably the worst thing you can do for a box turtle. I mean, these turtles live to be 40, 50, 60 years old, and generally they live within a couple acre area. So in that couple of acres, they know where hibernate, they know where to get food, they know where the water is, and when you move them, they have an incredible homing instinct where they just want to get back to their own home range. So usually they'll just keep trucking and end up getting killed on a road. So if you see a turtle on a road, definitely if it's safe to stop and you can move it in the directions it's going, that's the best thing to do.
Get him off the road.
Yeah, get him off the road.
Or avoid him at all costs. Now, we got this question earlier, but we're getting a lot. Patricia Powell's from Jefferson County. How do you get bats out of the attic?
So bats in the attic is unfortunately a very common thing that people find in the summertime. And it's usually one of two species. It's either big brown bats or little brown bats. And with the little brown bats being impacted by white nose syndrome, it's mostly big brown bats these days. So a good thing to remember is bats can get into an area, they can go through a 1/4 of an inch hole or bigger. It's basically the size of their skull. So once they're in and once they establish residence, it's hard to get them out. And so we permit nuisance wildlife control operators, and there are some in the state and surrounding areas that specialize in bat removal. So I would reference our website, fw.ky.gov. And if you have bats in your home or you find bats or dead or dying bats in your yard or on your property, or you have bats in your barn, we also have a Report a Bat webpage on our website, and I encourage people to use that.
Margaret's from Grayson. Ringneck turtle doves. Will snakes eat bugs in your garden?
Absolutely.
Any type of snakes? What type of...
Garter snakes are usually the snakes that are in and around your garden, and they are excellent at eating slugs and insects that might also eat your produce plants.
I wouldn't think this is possible, but I'm hearing music.
I know.
Are y'all playing guitar
gosh.
on your back or something with your feet? Oh, you know what that means? That means the show is over. Can you believe that? That was an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling in tonight and asking really good questions. One of the most common questions right here, Lucille's from Kenton County. Snakes in your house. What are you going to do at that point?
Well,
how are you going to get it?
If you're not comfortable around snakes or don't know what type of snake it is, even though it's probably a rat snake or a racer or something harmless, call a nuisance wildlife control operator and they'll help you out.
1-800-858-1549. We have listings. Thank you so much, each one, for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
You could have been doing something else on Saturday night.
Could have been.
Like making Kentucky Afield hats. Thank you so much for being here. You think we can sneak one more in? Flying squirrel in the birdhouse. What do I feed him? Nothing. Let him get his own food, right?
Yeah, don't touch a flying squirrel.
I saw a man get eaten up by a flying squirrel on this stage one time.
They're super cute, but very vicious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coming up on Saturday night, the 29th of August, the Fall Fishing Live Call-in Show, 1 hour special. We hope you can join us for that. Nice to have a partner with the boys over on the TV side of the hallway. We are out of time. This is Charlie Baglin inviting you to join us in a week, and we'll go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.